Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show.
And coming up this week, we will be rounding up an exhilarating week of racing here in Belgium at the UCI World Championships. So many amazing performances, a big disappointment for a few fans here on the last day, and one of the performances that was the most emotional came in our commentary box.
Plus, we've also had the first real taste of autumn cobbles at the GP de Denain, and the cyclocross season is in full swing with 3 major races run off at the weekend. What a belter of a race we have had to round off the whole week of the World Championships. As much as we love them though, the men's race can often be, how should we say it, a bit of a slow burner. Not a lot happens for the first 200 kilometres and then bam. Yesterday though, all hell broke loose in the first 100 kilometres of the race. The standard early breakaway had formed, but the attacks continued behind, and a group containing Remco Evenepoel, Kasper Asgreen and Primož Roglic, among others, broke clear. It left Italy, who had missed it, royally screwed, basically. They were forced into a very long, hard chase. The general speed of the race meant that everyone was in for a very tough few hours. It was simply unrelenting. The early break was also early to be caught, and multiple groups went off the front of the race, more often than not containing a number of hitters who could conceivably win the race under the right circumstances. Remco Evenepoel and at least one of the French team were in most of those moves, the team of the defending champion clearly intent on making the whole day as hard as possible. A particularly dangerous group went up the road with 90 kilometres to go, with Evenepoel, Magnus, Van Baarle and Paulus among those within it. Great Britain chased, but the gap was only closed when Alaphilippe made his first big move of the day, drawing out what would turn out to be the decisive split. But not the final split. Alaphilippe's brutal accelerations on the short, sharp climbs that littered the course around Leuven were stinging to watch, let alone follow. And with his final one, set up beautifully by Magnus, nobody could follow, not even Wout van Aert. It wasn't a done deal though, until it was. Despite having 250 kilometres of flat-out racing in his legs, Alaphilippe extended his advantage over a chasing group of Volgren, Van Baarle, Paulus and Stuyven, second by second. With 10 kilometres remaining and the big favourites Van Aert and Van der Poel now over 40 seconds down, the result was already clear, much to the disappointment of the home crowd. But didn't he deserve it? You can't help but love Alaphilippe's swashbuckling style and seemingly unending energy, even if you're supporting another nation. The man is a racer's racer, flamboyant, entertaining, and above all, really blooming strong. That's 2 wins in 2 years at the World Championships for Alaphilippe. You have to tip your hat not only to him, but the whole French team. They worked really hard for that and deserved it. 32 seconds behind him, it was the Dutch who took silver, but not that the Dutchman most people were expecting to be up there. Dylan Van Baarle proved yet again what a dependable and classy bike rider he is, as did Michael Volgren in third. Belgium, despite all of their hard work, didn't deliver, but they couldn't really have done any better with what they had on the day. Stuyven would have had to settle for 4th in his hometown, whilst Wout van Aert showed that he is only human, saying as much in his post-race interview, in fact, by finishing just outside the top 10. Nelson Paulus pulled out one of the rides of the day with 5th, whilst Pidcock, Stybar, Seneschal, Van der Poel and Colbrelli rounded out the top 10. Now, man of the match, though, has to go to Remco Evenepoel. Many questioned whether he would commit to the Belgian cause or to his own. Amongst them, the great Eddie Merckx even. But the youngster couldn't have laid it on the line anymore. He was in every move that mattered, and when the last of those was caught, he buried himself on the front to keep the group clear and dissuade any attacks. You don't need the numbers to know what an incredible ride he did, but I'm going to read them out to you anyway. For 5 hours, he had an actual average power of 270 watts. For 6 hours, he had a weighted average power of 298 watts. Bear in mind, he only weighs 62 kilos. But so it will be Alaphilippe, proudly wearing the rainbow bands for another 12 months. Well played, that man. And well played to Belgium too. In a week of spectacularly well-organised racing, it reinforced itself as the home of cycling. The crowds on the roadsides was something to behold. And save for a couple of idiots booing and throwing beer on Alaphilippe, very well behaved too. 24 hours previously, in the women's race, it was a question of which Dutch woman would win. As ever, they had an embarrassment of riches on the start line, with most of them more than capable of winning on their day. Annemiek van Vleuten was the first of the big names to try and make a move, with still 100 kilometres remaining, but it wasn't until 60k to go that the team made a concerted effort at the front to break the race. That sparked off a number of attacks, with Vos, Nui-Adoma and Moolman Pasio particularly active. It became clear soon after that the Dutch weren't going to have things all their own way though, and it was Spain and Mavi Garcia who looked particularly threatening late on. She broke clear, solo, carving out a lead of half a minute as the race approached the final 20 kilometres. As they heard the bell, that lead had come down to just 15 seconds, and she'd been caught 3 kilometres later. And that was when the Dutch really set out to break the race apart completely, with Van Vleuten, Brand, Vos, Van Dijk all making big accelerations. However, try as they might, they were unable to get themselves away, at which point it was all in for Vos for a sprint. That, though, didn't go to plan. They seemed unable to get themselves together to give her even a half-decent lead-out. At the opposite end of the spectrum, we had Italy, who delivered a superb textbook lead-out to Elisa Balsamo. They still had numbers to play with in the closing kilometre of the race, and ultimately, it was Elisa Longo Borghini who went so fast, she gapped everyone except her teammate. Balsamo is notoriously quick to the line, and in the end, it was a comfortable, if relatively surprising, victory for the 23-year-old. Vos, who'd had to close a gap on her own in the run into the line, would have to settle for silver, whilst Nui-Adoma, who'd ridden a fantastic race throughout, bagged herself the bronze. Balsamo will no doubt do the jersey proud next year, but in her post-race interview, she said the win was a revenge for the rest of her season, which hadn't gone to plan. Doesn't really matter though, does it, when you become the world champion? And she's one of those annoying people who is far too talented. In her spare time, she's a piano virtuoso who's studying for a degree in modern and contemporary literature at the University of Turin. Fourth on the day went to Hungary's Blanka Vas, who was also the first under-23 rider. And if she does that next year, she'll be the under-23 world champion. The UCI announced last week that there would finally be an under-23 category at the World Championships for women next year. For the first time, many have questioned the logic of running it within the elite women's race and not as a standalone. And I'd have to agree, why wouldn't they just give them their own race? Anyway, the post-race breakdown online seemed to focus only slightly on the winner and more on how the Dutch managed to get things wrong for a second consecutive major championships. Dan caught up with 11th placed finisher Ashley Moolman Pasio to get her thoughts on it.
They're all so good, and I don't think anyone has the balls to tell the others to work for one particular rider. So they're trying to race this like everyone take your chance, and whoever gets away, you're the one we're going to support. But yesterday was, I think, quite clearly a sprinter's course. You know, it was going to be very difficult for something to last. And so the Dutch basically exploded themselves because every one of them wanted to take their opportunity. So they were attacking and counterattacking, attacking and counterattacking. None of them managed to stay away, and then that meant they didn't have a proper lead out for Marianne. So, yeah, they just killed themselves. Whereas the Italians, they're pretty amazing how they managed to come together on the day. So they're all strong characters, they race for their own teams, and they're winners all in their own right, but they have this amazing national pride that when they come together, it's all for Italy, and it doesn't matter who it is on the day. And so I think the Dutch, you know, I used to see that in the first years of my career, it was always for Marianne, and they worked incredibly well as a team. But in the past 2 years, it's really, you know, it's not happening anymore. They're not gelling well as a team, and I think that's why they're losing.
So they just can't get all the riders to work for one common goal. Too many chefs in the kitchen, I guess. Sometimes that works, more recently it hasn't. And you'd imagine they'll be back to the drawing board in 12 months' time. The race marked the last in the careers of both Ruth Winder and Anna van der Breggen, who Bernie caught up with after the finish. Here's a snippet of what will eventually be a full GCN Plus documentary.
When you look back, which moments have really stand out for you in your exceptional career?
At the moment, it's not one moment. It's just grateful for the time I had as a cyclist, and then that I could do good races and that I could meet nice people. I'm happy with how it went, and also that it's finished now and that I have a future still in cycling. It gives me a lot, and hopefully I can give other girls also this feeling.
What a legend Anna van der Breggen is. She has won pretty much everything there is to win in this sport and will now help others to do the same as she becomes a sports director with her team, SD Works. Meanwhile, in the under-23 men's event, which saw an enormous number of crashes and incidents, it was a non-World Tour rider who took the win, and I think a lot of us were pleased about that. To me, it always seems a little bit strange to see fully fledged pros battling it out in a category that I would say is for aspiring riders. You would not expect to see Tadej Pogačar lining up, for example. Anyway, it didn't matter because Filippo Baroncini attacked on the penultimate climb of the day and managed to hold the bunch at bay for the remaining 5 kilometres of the race. He, incidentally, will be riding for Trek Segafredo next year. Now, behind him, we had the first ever medal for Eritrea at the UCI World Championships. Binyam Girmay managed to thread his way through gaps that didn't even look like they were there to win the bunch kick and take silver, with Dutchman Olaf Kooi taking bronze. There was success for Norway in the junior men's event, with Per Strand Hagenas turning the tables on Frenchman Romain Grégoire 2 weeks on from the European Championships. We at GCN Plus also had a particularly vested interest in the junior women's race though, with our commentator Magnus Baxter trying his very best to stay cool, calm and collected, whilst his youngest daughter Zoe attempted to win the rainbow jersey. She had got away with American Kaya Schmidt in the last couple of laps, and it would end up being a 2-up sprint to the line. I won't say anything else. I will just let you watch a very proud dad watch a very talented daughter.
Who is going to make their move first? Fortune favours the brave here today in this one. Great Britain and the USA. The destiny awaits these two riders in the sprint. Kaya Schmidt, Zoe Backstead is going to be the first to make the move. Kaya Schmidt goes, Backstead responds. It's going to be quite a sprint between these two. Schmidt and Backstead, they cut to the line, throw the line. Zoe Backstead is the world champion. Backstead takes the rainbow jersey, silver medal in the individual time trial. Kaya Schmidt takes silver for the USA. It's gold to Great Britain, silver to the USA. Where is the bronze medal going? Flora Perkins.
I'm not crying. You're crying. No, seriously, how cool was that? Absolutely brilliant. Zoe had only turned 17 the day before the race, so that scary prospect for others is that she still has another year in that category. Now, in the early events, we had some tremendous performances in the time trials. Just after last week's GCN Racing news show, Ellen van Dijk scorched around the course at an average speed of over 50 kilometres per hour to claim the elite women's world title. 8 years after her first. Marlen Reusser of Switzerland pushed her close though, with Van Vleuten giving the Dutch a second medal with third. Amber Nieben put in a great performance to come fourth. The 46-year-old had been involved in a training accident a few weeks beforehand in which she'd fractured her pelvis, making that feat all the more impressive. In the junior women's, Zoe Backstead smashed all previous times at the intermediate time check and at the finish, but was ultimately beaten by Elena Ivanchenko of Russia by 10 seconds. The junior men's event was won by Denmark's Gustav Wang, who averaged over 52 kilometres per hour as a junior, bear in mind. Britain's Joshua Tarling took second place there, whilst the under-23s was also won by a Dane, Johan Price Petersen. The 22-year-old rides for Uno X and beat Australia's Luke Plapp, who now rides with Ineos Grenadiers, and Belgian Florian Vermeesch, who is also already in the World Tour with Lotto Soudal. And finally, the mixed relay, which, as Dan mentioned last week, was the final professional race for Tony Martin. And it ended in a gold medal and rainbow jerseys for Germany. What a way to bow out by becoming world champion in your final race. Chapeau. Martin rode alongside Nicholas Arndt and Max Valscheid before heading over to Lisa Brennauer, Mika Kroger and Lisa Klein. And it's not only Tony that won't be able to proudly wear those rainbow bands next season, as unfortunately there will be no other mixed relay events in the coming year. Meanwhile, in France, we had the GP de Denain, which for many of the riders taking part served as a warm-up race for Paris-Roubaix, which is next week. With its multiple cobblestone sectors, Ineos, who were riding disc brakes for the first time, smashed one of those sectors with over 60 kilometres to go, drawing a small but strong group clear. However, other teams managed to organise a chase behind, which ultimately saw Michael Kwiatkowski caught within sight of the finish line. Alpecin Fenix's Jasper Philipsen won the sprint from what was left of the main peloton to make it 3 wins from his last 3 races. It has been quite the season for him and for that team. With that win, they equalled the most ever wins in a season for a second-tier pro men's team, and they have plenty more racing to take even more wins starting this week. If you thought things would calm down after the World Championships, you would be wrong. We have a huge amount of live racing coming up for you on GCN Plus this week, and the biggest of all of them is Paris-Roubaix. The Hell of the North is being run for the first time, would you believe it, in 2.5 years on Sunday and also Saturday, because that is when the inaugural women's Paris-Roubaix will be held. I am seriously excited about it. In fact, I'm excited about the whole weekend. On top of the live racing, all will be back on this sofa to host the breakaway pre- and post-race shows on both days with Danny Christmas, Magnus Backstead and Adam Blythe as the guests. Plus, we will have Iris Slappendale and Bernie Eisel on motorbikes in and around the race to give us all the insights into what is happening. Our big preview of the races coming out on Thursday ahead of the weekend should not be missed. And that's not just because of Paris-Roubaix, we've also got a whole load of other races this weekend. On Sunday, it's also the 4th round of the US Cyclocross Series, the 1st round of the Super Prestige Series, and the Sparkassen Munsterland Giro. That is a lot, I'm not going to lie. Before the weekend, we have the Tour of Sicily 4-day stage race, the 6-day Crow race, and the 1-day Eurometropole Classic from Belgium. There are some territory restrictions on some of the races I've just mentioned, so as ever, please check what is available where you are. Believe it or not, I actually haven't finished yet either. We are also very proud to be showing Joss Loudon's hour record attempt on Thursday. Loudon, according to reports, has already surpassed the current record of 48.007 kilometres in training, but is making her official attempt this week to try to take the record away from Victoria Bussy, who's held it since 2018. And on top of that, we are very pleased to announce that we will be live streaming the Zwift Racing League starting next month, right here on GCN Racing's YouTube channel. That's right, we are actually entering a team ourselves, although for some reason we didn't quite make the Premier League, which I'm quite thankful for because we'd get absolutely smashed. But rather, we're racing in the European Northern A-League, with a view, of course, to getting promoted for the following season. At which point, then Dan could perhaps join the team and get us demoted again. Anyway, that particular league starts tomorrow at 7:30 British Summer Time. You're all very welcome to join the league with us so you can compare yourselves to the GCN team. And it's the GCN All-Stars. We've got presenters from all across the world taking part. Which adds a bit of pressure, doesn't it really? So hopefully we won't come last. But even if we do, we've got 8 rounds to improve. So that's what we want to see ultimately, progression. It's all a journey, ladies and gentlemen. The live coverage of the Zwift Racing League Premier Division, though, starts on Monday, October the 11th and runs for 6 consecutive Monday evenings. That's European time. We'll be having a pre- and post-race show, plus live commentary as the best teams in the world go head-to-head. On to cyclocross now, and it was a busy weekend of racing. First up was the 3rd round of the Ethias Cross in Bredin. In the women's race, it was Denise Betzema who was back to her winning ways 2 weeks after victory in the first race of the season. Most of the top cyclocross stars were there, save for Blanca Vass and world champion Lucinda Brand, both of whom were racing the Road World Championships that were actually just down the road, would you believe? One of the most impressive performances of the day, though, came from 19-year-old Puck Peterse. She was regularly attacking the front group, but wasn't able to match Betzema's speed on the final lap. Peterson would end up with 3rd on the day, with Yara Kastelein in 2nd, an all-Dutch podium. And beyond that, for the first time ever in a pro cyclocross race in Belgium, the entire top 10 was Dutch. In the men's race, Belgium did have something to shout about, as it was 3 from 3 for Elisa, who's already on fantastic form. It was much closer this time around than for the previous 2 rounds, probably in part down to the very fast course, but he proved more powerful than the rest in the closing laps, crossing the line 3 seconds in front of his pal Sausen Bingold teammate Laurens Sviek, who'd had to close a 30-second gap after an incident in the opening part of the race. Over in the US, we had the first and second rounds of the inaugural US cyclocross series in Rochester, which I hope a lot of you lot got to enjoy watching live on GCN+. If you didn't, of course, they're all available for you to catch up on demand. In the women's races, Magali Rochette was utterly dominant. On day 1, she got the whole shot into the first corner, gapped everyone else over that first lap, and was never seen again. US national champion Clara Honsinger tried in vain to close her down, but would have to settle for second on the day, with Caroline Manny in third. And it was the same podium the following day, only this time Rochette was even more dominant, with almost a whole minute to spare over Honsinger by the finish line. Things were far less clear-cut in the opening round of the men's race, with a group of 10 still locked together at the end of the first lap. However, by the halfway point of the race, Vincent Bastains had flown the nest, and there was nothing the home riders could do about it. Riding for the Desacht Hens Mays team, he finished about 10 seconds clear of Kerry Werner of Kona Adventure Racing in second, with Stephen Hyde taking the third step at the podium. In round 2, a group of 4 had prized itself clear a quarter of the way through the race, with those top 3 finishes from the previous day joined by Curtis White. However, he would later be gapped, leaving the same 3 to fight it out. Despite his best efforts on the closing lap, Hyde was unable to shake off the Belgian, who managed to eke out a small gap by the line to make it 2 from 2. That series continues this weekend, so make sure you check it out. Now, in other news, it has been made official, finally, that the 2025 UCI Road World Championships will be held in Kigali, Rwanda, making it the first time the event will ever have taken place in Africa. Now, I think we all know how electric the atmosphere is going to be there, having seen footage from their national tour in recent years. Team Cofidis have unveiled their 10-woman roster for the 2022 season. Australian Rachel Neylan and German Clara Koppenberg will bring important experience to the team in its first season, whilst talented time trialist Pernille Mathiasen will step out of Marianne Voss's shadow at Jumbo-Visma. Fantastic to see another women's pro team in the peloton. In transfer news, Vincenzo Nibali's long-rumoured move back to Astana has been confirmed. The Italian enjoyed some of his most successful years there from 2013 to 2016, but at 36 years of age now, it's going to be interesting to see whether he is able to get back to that level. Now, I was particularly pleased to see that Michael Reim will be back at the pro level with Burgos BH next year. The Estonian had spent 5 years with Israel Startup Nation, but was unable to find a contract at the top level for this season. Undeterred, he signed for a Polish third division team, taking 3 wins, including his national championships. Eleanor Barker, who hasn't ridden for a pro team on the road since 2019, will make her return next year with the women's Uno X team. The 27-year-old Brit has spent the last few years focusing on the track, coming away with a silver medal in the team pursuit at the recent Tokyo Olympics. But I wouldn't be surprised to see her win on the road sooner rather than later upon her return. Back in 2017, you remember, she won a stage of the Beanie Ladies Tour, soloing to the win and holding off none other than Marianne Vos, who won the sprint behind. Meanwhile, there is another rider moving away from Team Bike Exchange next year. Sarah Roy will be joining Canyon SRAM instead. De Koning Quickstep have been busy scouting the junior category races and have signed young Slovakian talent Martin Srek. If anyone can let me know how to pronounce that correctly, by the way, it would be much appreciated, because I have a feeling that we're going to be saying his name a lot over the next few years. He won 15 races this season. And after 2 years with Astana Premier Tech, Oscar Rodriguez is heading to his home World Tour team, Movistar. Also heading away from Astana is Jon Isaguirre, who'll be racing for Cofidis next season. And finally, Ineos Grenadiers' latest recruit is American Magnus Sheffield. The 18-year-old holds the junior world record for the individual pursuit and nabbed himself 10th place last week at the under-23 individual time trials in his first year in that category. Right, that is all for this week's show. Dan will be back in the hot seat next week to round up all of the action from Paris-Roubaix, plus the rest of the week's racing, of which, remember, there is a whole truckload. Good luck watching it all on GCN Plus and enjoy it. What an amazing week of racing it is going to be. From me, though, it's goodbye.